can still make serious money in the property market here in the UK, but not through the traditional method that most people understood it to be. That is, buying a property to rent it out and making the difference between the interest you pay to the bank and the amount of rent that you get from your tenants. The UK government has been constantly cracking down on landlords who own additional homes to rent out and make money off of that, and also build wealth through holding properties that could be in the hands of first-time buyers. With that in mind, the new strategies that have come up are making people serious wealth, and in this video, I'm going to break down all the different strategies so you can get ideas on how you can make money, passive or active, in a property business. Without much ado, let's get right into it. The first way that people are making money through property is by renting the property out on short-term accommodation platforms like Airbnb and Booking.com. With this particular strategy, I'm going to break it down into three. The first one is when you rent from a landlord and rent it out on these platforms. The second one is when you buy a property and decide to rent it out on these platforms. And the third one is being an agent who takes on properties from a landlord and rents it out on the short-term accommodation platforms and gets a commission off of the nightly rates that the landlord is renting out. With all these three forms under the short-let accommodation strategy, the main way by which most people make money is through the nightly rates that they charge for people to lodge for a few days or even up to 3 months of staying in that particular property. I'll dive deep into each of them for you to understand. So the rent-to-rent strategy. With the rent-to-rent strategy, you approach a landlord who wants to let out to you on a company-let or a company structure, and you guarantee the rent for the landlord, whether the property is occupied or not. You do up the property to make it appealing for people who are looking to stay for a short period and put it out on platforms like Airbnb and Booking.com. With that, your nightly rates make you more money than what you are paying the landlord and also pay for all the cost of running this business. If you think of the investment or capital you need to start this business, this particular strategy is one of the easiest ones to get into because all you need is to get your first rent, your deposit, and how much you're going to use to furnish the property, and you can list it out on these platforms. A lot of research goes into which particular properties will be profitable. Are they close to a station? Are they close to supermarkets? Are they close to parts of the community where tourists and other visitors will come in quite often? Currently, most people doing this strategy are focused on people who will stay for a month or more. So if you think about it, you have contractors who are going into areas to work for a period of time, usually between 1 to 3 months. And if you secure a booking with such contractors, they can stay for a month or more, and that reduces the risk of not having bookings on these platforms. You can do the same thing by buying that property to rent it out, but you need to make sure it's in a good location that will help that particular strategy. Or you can decide to be an agent who goes round finding people who already have their properties on Airbnb or Booking.com and asking to manage their property for them. With this in mind, you only make a commission when you get bookings, but your risk here is super low. The next strategy I'm going to talk about is called the BRRR strategy. That is buy, renovate, rent, refinance. This strategy is one of the most risky strategies, but you can make a lot of money doing this strategy. The idea is to identify a property that is undervalued and needs some work to be done to it. When a property deteriorates, it can only be lived in if it's renovated. With that in mind, most people selling those kind of properties will usually sell it at a discount to account for the deterioration in the property. People doing these property strategies identify these kind of deteriorated properties, value it when it's fully renovated, and try to make the difference between buying, renovation, and the end value when they finish the renovation. I'll put some numbers to this. Assuming that you buy a property for £100,000, the end value that you've calculated when you finish renovating is going to be £200,000. But if you're able to renovate that property with just £50,000, you make a profit of £50,000 by the end of the renovation. With this, you can go to the bank and say, I own this property, but I want to take out a loan on it. And the bank will lend you money as a mortgage on 75% of the property. So if you happen to have spent £150,000 on that property, that means that the extra £50,000 should have been your deposit for you to get that property. You made the deposit money by doing the renovation. The reason why this is one of the riskiest and one of the most demanding property strategies is that One, you need to find money to buy the property and renovate it. Most people will use something called a bridging loan. It's a type of mortgage, but it's more aggressive because it is a bridge between you buying the property and you getting a mortgage. Most of the time, this is because a lender will not lend on properties that are deteriorated. So these bridging companies usually take the risk of loaning you some part of that money. You bring out some of the money for the renovation and work it out to make sure that by the end of the renovation, the value of the property is higher than how much you bought it and renovated it for. After this, most people will rent this out through different strategies. You can do the HMO strategy if that was your plan. You can do the service accommodation, the one we discussed before, or you can do a regular rental, but you would have secured your profit at the beginning of the transaction when you finish the renovation. The third strategy by which people are making money through property, it's something called commercial properties. So when most people buy their first home, they think of making money by buying a second home and renting it out to other individuals. But most people forget that the shops and all these commercial places and offices where people go to work are all properties that are owned by individuals. So you can buy a commercial property and rent it out to companies. This is one of the most secure ways of getting income because most companies, if they are well established, do not like to move locations. So if you own a property that is being rented out by a company that is well established, you most likely are going to get revenue from that company for a long period of time. Most of these leases, when you own a commercial property, is between 5 to 10 years if you're renting to the right type of company. And commercial properties are valued differently from residential properties. So if you can work out how to value a property properly and buy it at a lower price and rent it to the right company or tenant, this could be a very profitable strategy. The other thing I need to mention when it comes to commercial property is that you can use your pension even when you have not reached the pension age to buy your first commercial property, but you cannot use your pension to buy a residential property. So even though some people may not have the deposit upfront, if they've worked on contributing into their pension and they have access to control that pension, you can use money from your pension as a down payment to buy a commercial property. The fourth strategy that I need to mention is called a lease option agreement. What is this? This is when either in a residential or commercial property, an individual or a company approaches a landlord who has a property on their hands, want to sell it, but the value of the property is not where they would like to sell it at. The person will approach the landlord and ask to lease it for a period of time with the option to buy the property at the price that the landlord would love to sell their property at. If this works out, the person will lease out the property and use it for whatever they want to use it for, whether they want to use it for the short-term accommodation, whether they want to use it for HMOs, whatever they want to use it for, they will do so with the option to buy it at the price that's been agreed upfront from the landlord. They can choose to buy it or not, but the landlord is obligated to sell the property to them. The fifth strategy by which people are making money in property is doing HMOs. This is house of multiple occupancy. This particular strategy is highly regulated here in the UK because it got to a point where landlords were fully taking advantage of it and converting any homes they get their hands on into an HMO. So you need to check the licensing rules and the regulations for the particular area you're trying to do an HMO. The idea is to buy a property and rent out room by room to different individuals and make profit off of that. So an example is to get an 8-bed property and rent out room by room with maybe a shared kitchen or a shared communal space. And these type of properties are usually found close to schools or in areas where property rental prices are quite high, like in London. So most people will prefer to just rent a room to get by until they've saved enough money to buy their own property or get a rental that they can be more comfortable in. This is one of the most profitable strategies because half of the rent from all the rooms pays for the cost of the property and half of the rent from the rest of the rooms is pretty much your profit. The last one I will mention is a flip. A flip is basically a BRRR, a buy, renovate, rent, refinance. But with this case, instead of refinancing, you sell it and make your profit. So with the same example, if you buy a property for 100k, you renovate it for 50k, and the end value is 200k, you sell the property at 200k and make 50k profit. Let's not forget, when you're doing this strategy, you need to account for capital gains and there is a tax applicable if you make money through this particular strategy. I hope this helps you if you've been thinking about starting your own property business on which one you would like to focus on. If you'd like me to drill down into any of these strategies, do let me know and I'll make another video about that. It's been Abigail. If you like this video, you will also like the other video I made about different ways by which you can make money from a property that you already own. I'm going to link that somewhere on this video. You can click on it and watch that. I'll put it in the description as well. If you like this video, give me a thumbs up and I'll see you next week.